Well, hello there. So you're that normie who wandered in the movie theater halfway through and is wondering what's going on. This is Donny cast number 14 on the 16th of June, 2022. I am your host, Walter, on the good line, the greater good. So let's just get into it because, the world is depressing, so we should make ourselves more depressed. So because I realize that there's probably a lot of people out there that are still wondering about the January 6th committee that's going on, which is a just gigantic show trial. Might as well have drag dancers and children there. How ridiculous this is. So some of the notes for today are Mike Pence, the former VP, told Trump that the election count rejection was illegal. That was the one where the basically by statute the vice president gets to elect the next president. Federal judge Trump's order would have been tantamount to revolution. No, it wouldn't. Also, Pence's decision that the electoral count rejection was illegal is wrong. It is objectively wrong. Um, now I think it's probably under scrutiny would end up being rejected by the courts, but in the short term, that's not his decision necessarily to make. Whether or not it's illegal, it's whether or not he would do it is a different question. And a federal judge, I don't care. I don't care who Michael Lidditch told the committee that Trump obeyed orders from Trump declaring Trump the presidential election winner would have been plunged America in what he would have tantamount to a revolution within a constitutional crisis. It may have done that, and it was probably better that Trump didn't or that Pence didn't do that, because all it would have done is set precedent in the future that any political party could have triggered this to step around any type of democratic election, or in this case, I shouldn't even say democratic. We'll get into that later. This would be our republic, our constitutional republic with our electoral college. The vice president cannot simply choose the president. Again, that is up to debate. So making that assertion is patently dumb, because that is not for anybody to make. That's a matter of opinion, not a matter of law. And if you don't believe me, here is a story from Yahoo dated January 7th, 2022 that says the loophole that Trump tried to steal the election with is still there. Fuck, I hate people. Like, keep your lies straight. If you're going to lie, you have to remember your lie so you continue to lie. In this case, this is what it's talking about. The Congress has already tried to close this loophole because it's there, because either side could end up trying to use it in the future. It would cause a constitutional crisis because people would have to come in and opine and essentially decide what the spirit of the law, the letter of the law is, and it would just be better if it was fixed through legislation. But that is to say, what was the intent of it by the founding fathers when they put it in the first place? And it may have been in the first place to allow a loophole for widespread election fraud or other tomfoolery. And again, YouTube not making a distinction of whether or not it happened. I'm just pointing out the potential reality of why it was written so ambiguously by the founding fathers. So again, Hannity very worried. I don't care. Hannity's a hack. Intense effort to lean on Pence. Okay, that's his prerogative. It becomes a matter of whether or not any of his activities were illegal, and if Trump was exhausting all legal remedies to what he believed was a fraudulent election, that's his prerogative. That's why we have three separate branches of government. Trump lawyer John Eastman, that he acknowledged the proposals would violate provisions of the Electoral College Act. Again, that's not necessarily for these guys to decide. Jump ball situation. Jacob in describing the standoff that could arise under Eastman's plans for rejecting electors, assuming courts did not get involved, which they would have. Said result could have been an unprecedented constitutional jump ball situation that might well have decided in the street. Yeah, and it may have, but again, show me where any of this is actually illegal, leading towards some type of criminal charges. That's what they're looking for. This is just a show trial to rile the base going into the 2022 midterms, which are going to be a bloodbath for the Democrats, and they need anything that they can to claw themselves back into some type of functional state of opposition, because they're getting their clocks clean. And we'll get into some of the other stupid stuff that they've been up to just in the last couple days. And again, I'm not a Republican, I am an independent, and I think the Republicans voting for Republicans are putting a tampon in a bullet wound. I will repeat that. So if anybody's worried about me being partisan, I'm partisan in the direction of I want my country to not suck. So moving forward, this is coming off the back of what's going on out there in the January 6th show trial. We have in New Mexico, a county of New Mexico is refusing to certify the vote. New Mexico is primarily blue. They didn't really talk about totally the party lines, other than this county is red, and the people that are on the commission to certify the election said they have serious pause about the Dominion voting machines. And even though this article says they couldn't actually point out to any reasons why they had pause, they just had pause to say that since there's Dominion voting machines involved, they did not want to certify an election that they had qualms about. It's almost like if we had taken care of this 2 years ago, we wouldn't have this problem. If we had transparency, if we had actual some type of sincerity going on, we wouldn't be sitting here where some hicks out in the middle of New Mexico are heeing and hawing off of stuff that they saw off the dark recesses of the internet, because no one is actually engaging in any truthful interaction and empathy with their neighbor. So this is just leading up to what potentially could happen in 2022 and 2024, coming off the back of they're worried that the loophole that Trump was trying to use would have caused certain political discord in the streets. Well, it's coming regardless of whether or not he did it or not. It's coming. And to think that you're not going to have certain problems in 2022 and 2024 when it comes to both sides believing in the legitimacy of outcomes, even though it looks like there's going to be a red wave and both sides kind of believe there's going to be a red wave, you still have to pretend that the emperor has clothes on. And what happened after the 2022 election, no one pretended, or well, most people pretended that didn't even go through the motions of making anybody feel better about anything. And now those chickens are going to come home to roost. Let's see, moving forward. So yesterday, the breaking news popped up. I don't really think this is too big of a story, especially because Canada is not a real country. And we'll get into more of the reason why Canada is not a real country. But this popped up. It's the money laundering report of points to government Royal Canadian Mounted Police failures, but finds no corruption. That's fine. So it's better to have an incompetent government than it is or not a corrupt government. Okay, that's awesome. So it's talking about widespread money laundering in casinos in British Columbia underneath a liberal government. And it's just that the liberal government was like, we're stupid and we don't know how to combat money laundering. So we did nothing, even though we knew about it, and give us more power because we're that stupid and incompetent. Okay, that's the gist of the story. Um, Other news, like I said, Canada is not a real country. It's trying to make Australia, it's trying to will the fake country of Australia into existence by being dumber than Australia. And mind you, Australia is a place where they can't, like I read a story today where they can't even maintain their power grid. Um, and Canada is like, hey, hold my beer about how stupid a country we can be. And I'm talking about in reference to the United States, massive levels of stupidity. So here's one. So the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Castro, he been triple vaxxed. He's got COVID for the third time. But he was able to tweet out that his administration was able to come to a dispute. We've reached a historic milestone, he said in his tweet, in the relationship between Canada and the Kingdom of Denmark. Again, Denmark might not even be a real country. The dispute over Hans Island has officially ended. Yesterday, Minister some stupid lady and Minister, I'm not going to pronounce that name, signed an agreement to resolve outstanding boundary issues. Justin Castro, the illegitimate son of Fidel Castro, said in the street, this island has a little bit of infamy because it's where the Canadian military and the Danish military would exchange bottles of alcohol, because the joke, the war the conflict had devolved into such a meme, a joke at this point, that all the soldiers were doing was just like showing up on the island, putting their country's flag down with a different bottle of alcohol for the next side to show up and switch the flag out and put a different bottle of alcohol down, which I thought was cooler than we're going to, resolve this dispute instead of, the rampant money laundering that's going on in British Columbia. So bang up job proving that you shouldn't exist as a country, Canada. You should, secede back to France and, just dissolve yourself into nothing. Let's see. What else do we have on today's docket of I'm really feeling how much I enjoy my participation in the human experiment. Oh, the FDA advisors move one step closer to COVID-19 vaccine for kid under 5. And this is beyond levels of anything that is able to be understood, because if you look down here towards the bottom, um I wrote down in my notes that it says that you know estimates are that 3/4 of all children have already been infected. Why are you vaccinating children when they have very little chance of having adverse effects to the actual virus when they're infected, and 3/4 of them you already estimate have been infected, which means they already have natural immunity to the vaccine? That doesn't make any sense to me. On top of the fact, and this is again, I don't understand why people should be allowed to exist sometimes. Um, they actually have listed someplace in here that I have it written down that the Pfizer vaccine prevents symptomatic COVID infections. So the Pfizer vaccine doesn't even stop the infection. What it does is it stops the symptoms when you get infected, which means that your child is just going to be wandering around infecting everybody else, vaccinated or not, because they're still infected. Um, I'm at a loss for words other than the massive levels of corruption that are going on between the CDC and the FDA and big pharma. No one should be surprised by any of that. And the one guy who's not surprised by any of that, surprise here, is Governor Ron DeSantis. And this is our daily or weekly hurry up move to Florida segment of the show. Governor Ron DeSantis clashes with Biden White House over decision that Florida won't order vaccines for children under 5. And then the sophistry that's inside this actual article, because DeSantis literally says it's up to you to choose. It's the whole point behind what he's up to. Um, it's not the state's job to step in and say, yeah, right here, the state's recommendation holds. It's a recommendation against doing it, i.e., vaccinating kids under 5. DeSantis says Thursday, that's different than saying you can't. You are free to choose. That's what the state's job is. What's going on here is the state is not buying the vaccines to be distributed themselves. You could still go to a private place, or local government can buy vaccines themselves and they can distribute it. This is just the state not getting in the way. It's probably closer to proper government, how it should be done objectively, or at least culturally, how the US is supposed to be set up, where the snout of the government just stays out of things. I mean, I would actually go as far as to maybe say that the state shouldn't be recommending anything for anybody in the first place. But that's just me. Let's see. So we got more news on the stock market. Everybody prepares for you know uh the downturn, the recession that hasn't officially been declared, but everybody's starting to rumor mill about that we are in a recession, because the newsflash, we've been in a recession for a while. Yesterday on the show, I labeled the video, the Fed tried to fix the problem they caused by making it worse. And here's the article proving that I was right. The Federal Reserve can't even get the direction of the economy right, because what they're doing at this point is, after everybody's been telling them the sky is falling when it comes to inflation, the Fed is now stepping in to stop the inflation, ignoring the fact that the economy is slowing down, i.e., the recession that is occurring. So now the horribleness of stagflation is coming in, and it's almost like the British Columbia government not realizing that money laundering is taking place in front of them, or at the very least not doing anything about the money laundering and the massive levels of incompetence that we just give to government and say, hey, you're an expert, you're stupid, do something. And in this case, we've allowed all these people to be in charge of the economy and said, hey, the sky is falling, and they said nothing to see here. And then they go, oh shit, they spit their coffee all over the place, and then they start just slamming all the buttons that are in front of the machine trying to get it to do something because it's so bad at this point. And we'll actually get to we'll actually get to how bad it is in a couple stories. I'm going to go down this idea, which, first of all, remember Biden's $6 trillion good idea fairy economy flag that only got partially passed, which would have made the economy that much worse because of all the extra spending that's going on. Well, there's new details of more aid that we gave to Ukraine today. It's another $1 billion package. It's a whole bunch of military equipment. Um, I would just say, hey, instead of giving Ukraine $1 billion more of equipment, I would have pointed a sign south and said, hey, you should go down to Afghanistan, ask the Taliban if you can borrow some of our gear that we left there instead of spending $1 billion more. But when you're trying to throw $6 trillion into the furnace, no one's going to notice $1 billion. And I bring that up because I'm sure there's a picture someplace of Zelensky and Putin popping champagne together and laughing at embezzling a few $1 billion in US aid, because again, no one's going to notice it when you're just trying to throw trillions of dollars into the furnace. And I bring that up because right here, I gotta find it, that our good idea fairy government, after sending $40 billion in Ukraine aid, U.S. officials are now only raising red flags because they have no fucking idea where it's going. The Ukrainian government has stopped some of the confidential uh, intelligence sharing that they had with the US. So now they don't know where the money's going. It's just going into the ether of what some people are reporting is a lost cause in Ukraine. So we're just throwing more money into the furnace. Again, the third time I've said that. And we really have no idea where it's going. And that's why I have this picture of Zelensky playing ping pong, because who cares at this point? It doesn't matter. I really didn't want to click that button, but I did. And I'll just have to clear this out. So moving on from the $40 billion. Well, actually, it's not $40 billion. It's like 54 plus the extra one. So $55 billion has just been like disappeared into the banking systems of the world, or the hands of terrorist cells in Afghanistan. Let's see. The bubble. So now we're going to talk about the actual bubble that is that is occurring in our economy. So I know probably anybody out there hasn't been paying attention to my co-host and I as we talk about ESG a lot. So there's a Goldman Sachs investigation tarnishes ESG halo as investors bail. In this case, it's people starting to realize that these ESG scores have been a Ponzi scheme, and they've been propped up by asset management companies like BlackRock. Um, and people now that are just regular people that are starting to look into where they should invest their money are saying, I don't want my funds commingled in ESG companies, right? And a lot of people are like, well, tough shit, because there's no place to put your money that doesn't have some type of ESG related investing going on. Which means, like, and this one of the guys in here was talking about, like, he didn't want to invest his money into Meta because he's like, there's no way Meta, that's Facebook, isn't just full of shit, and I don't want my money anywhere near Meta, even though Meta had an ESG score. So I want to get my money out. And the guy's like, tough shit. Like, where are you going to put you investing your money into these ESG scores? And since these ESG scores have been artificially maintained by certain companies, like, again, Charles Schwab or BlackRock, down here at the bottom, these ESG related investments make up like 40% of pensions. I believe it says someplace in here. So there's your bubble. So when these companies that have been artificially or fraudulently, how shall we put this? They been analyzed for their financial value. when that bubble starts popping, when people start realizing these they've been overvalued for such a long time, and the stock starts falling back to earth, which is already occurring right now, but it just depends on the magnitude of where it falls once people start opening up the books. Right here. Retail clients make up about a quarter of direct investment flows into Europe, according to the European Fund Asset Management Association. On top of that, insurers and pension funds manage roughly 40% of total flows, much of which represent money saved by regular people. So the finance industry just can't afford to mess up this moment. Yeah. So like 40% of the investment in these companies, these ESG related companies, are tied up in regular people, not like the one percenters. And in this case, when that bubble pops, you're looking at the possibility of 40% of people's 40% of the market just having a harder time because of these people don't have the capital to overcome uh the swirl that will come down the pipe when the bubble pops. So that's what's going on a little bit with the ESG scores. If you have any questions about ESG stuff, as we learn a little bit more about it, because it is a tangled web, go ahead and pop it in the comments. That would be awesome. Let's see. Speaking of government entanglement in the economy, um, Massachusetts court shuts down gig work ballot. So California did the same stupid stuff where they're trying to classify people that want to be independent contractors as employees, which means these individuals don't get to set their own hours and try and negotiate their own pay and whatnot. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but anyway, the court in Massachusetts just basically punted on technicalities and kicked the initiatives off the ballot that have nothing to do with actually whether they're good or bad laws. It's just technicalities, because these are bad. Anything that prevents people from working because the state gets to decide what you are or are not is gets in the way of you being able to negotiate with someone that's willing to give you money. That's probably a bad idea. Keep the government snout out of it. And at the very least, they punted in Massachusetts, but because there's no intelligent people or people with any ball sack in Massachusetts, it doesn't matter, because they're going to take people's rights away to work, because fuck you, America. Um, let's see, moving on. And why I bring up that is, so I'm not a big fan of polls, because there's no way to actually have quote unquote a scientific poll. You can get more or less an aggregate to the zeitgeist. Just kind of gives you, it would be the tantamount to asking someone a question and sticking your finger in your mouth and figuring out which way the wind is blowing. It doesn't really mean anything. There are actually scientific studies that show that people will lie on polls and then go do something differently, because that's how of little value the polls are. But now half of Americans in new Gallup poll say that they would rate the overall state of morals in the U.S. as poor, a record high according to surveys. This heavily has to do with Republicans that see that morals are poor in the U.S., but you're seeing the rising tide of Democrats and independents saying that morals are bad. And I say, you get the fucking bed that you made, and goes to both sides. Conservatives' inability to find better politicians to push the country in the direction that it needs to go, and the same thing with liberals, quote unquote liberals, that have continued to vote for more and more batshit communist left. And then you wonder why the bitter taste of nihilism tastes so bad when you get it, because you've decided to be you know lazy about your responsibilities as a citizen within the society. And again, it may not be you. So like they used to say in the military, if this doesn't pertain to you, then let it go. But at the same time, we've had a lot of people that have been allowing the state to raise their children, that have been pointing at politicians and saying do something, and not to take a guy like JFK and say, ask not what you can do or what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country. In this case, that's exactly what's going on. Don't ask what the state can do to raise your children, and don't ask what the state can do to fix a problem that more than likely we as a society have created. So the other part of this that everybody's probably talking about, that I'm actually a little bit more happy about, even though it sounds bad, is people are really stupid, and maybe we can get back to the nation that we were intended to be as a constitutional a republic instead of a democracy. So most Democrats and Republicans say that democracy won't last in polls. We're not supposed to have be a democracy. So again, and I know to a certain extent you're splitting hairs over democracy and constitutional republic, but in this case it makes a big difference because it was unclear how the poll defined democracy. The US officially a constitutional federal republic where states run direct elections for most high offices, though not most notably for president. Again, the problem with this poll is that people are stupid, and I mean that with all due vitriol, because uh if the US fails to be the democracy that it is today, that means that we're probably going to balkanize into 50 independent states that run themselves like little countries. If I had to close my mind and catch my breath, because if you're not aware, that's how the country was designed. We literally yesterday talked about the cuck state of Rhode Island, who was the last one to join the country, and the first one out of the British Empire, and that's why we had something called the Federalist Papers at a certain point that certain states balked at because they were like, "Hey, this doesn't create a strong enough federal government for our tiny little nations to get together and make this bigger nation." So I'm just really curious. Like, okay, so we're gonna get the country that we're supposed to get instead of this fucking moron, you know, uh, tyranny of the masses. What the fuck is this picture? I hate myself. So anyway, I'm done. I'm done for the day. I don't want to be that guy. I have a few other stories that I'll probably break up and talk about other places. There's a story out there that I was reading about uh, some moron expert on fascism. I'll just show it to you while we're here as I check out for today. Uh, so this is Donny cast number 14. If you're still here, awesome. Go ahead, like, subscribe, leave me a comment. Nothing matters. So the other articles that I was taking a look at, one that I'm probably definitely going to be talking about in Cultural Entropy in a couple days. So this one, DeSantis is a very dangerous individual because he already absorbed all the lessons of Trump, but doesn't have any in the baggage. An expert on fascism argues. Stupid fuck. Define fascism, because unless you DeSantis is intentionally attempting to remove government entanglement with business, which is a necessary aspect of fascism. So later on in this Business Insider article, they actually say it's an expert on authoritarianism. When you literally have someone that's like, "Hey, it's your choice. Do whatever you want to do." That doesn't sound very authoritarian to me. So again, like I gotta look at the absolute abject state of journalism in the country, because that article is not even worth discussing. Then you have renowned racist Ibram X Kendi being able to and I can show you guys this. Hopefully, I won't give anything away. Pictures, maybe I had the picture someplace. I was going to show you guys the it should be screenshots. Here it is. So yesterday, hopefully there's nothing I'm going to dox myself on. So this is the uh, editorial page of the USA Today. USA Today is like the biggest newspaper in the country, widest circulation, and they just gave him the front where it says an assault on a critical race theory is assault on American children. This guy's an absolute uh, race grifter, and he's a moron. Anyway, there's no they didn't even allow someone else to have a rebuttal to what his statement was or two sides of the story. They're just giving him carte blanche to have his side of the story told. Um, that's not good journalism. And then finally, this story that I a shocker at the rifle that ruined America by this guy Ryan Pusse or whatever. Um, he's talking about how there used to be class in the arms manufacturer industry in the U.S. and the AR-15 was always looked at as a as a a dirty little scary black weapon, and whatever. Like I'm just like you're trying to push propaganda. There's no other side of the argument that you're pushing on. You're just going out there and you're fear mongering to people that are willing to be fear mongered to, because they don't have the intelligence to realize that we're not a democracy. So anyway, I'm about done for the day. I'm probably about done for the week, and getting really close to being done with things in general when there's certain news out like today. So anyway, I already did the outro. So if you're still here, then uh, you know, Epstein didn't kill himself.